morning, everyone. I'm Darlene Livingston from PA FarmLink, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar today. Can you make room for me? And our speaker today is farm expert and well-known speaker Joel Salatin from Polyface Farms. And I will say he has lots of experience with this within his own farm and his own family. And I look forward to hearing his tips and point of view on this and to help us learn how to better include the next gen and how we can do that. He owns the Polyface Farms with his family in Virginia, and they have been featured in the New York Times bestseller he has as the with the Omnivore's Dilemma, an award-winning documentary, Food Incorporated. The farm services more than 5,000 families, 10 restaurants, and 5 retail outlets with salad bark beef, pigerator pork, pastured poultry, and forest products. When he is not speaking and on the road and sharing his expertise with all of us and many other families and farms, he keeps calluses on his hands and dirt under his fingernails, mentoring young people, inspiring visitors, and promoting local regenerative food and farming systems. And I'd like to welcome Joel here today. He is also the editor of the Stockman Grass Farmer and granddaddy catalyst for the grass farming movement. And I look forward to hearing his insights. And I know I've heard some of his next gen speaking as well, and he has well prepared his whole family. And I look forward to what you have to say today.
Thank you, Darlene. It's a real special privilege and honor to share with all of you today. So let's go through. I've got basically 10 points about making room for the next generation and having an attractive situation for the next generation. So I've got 10 points. We'll go through them. As you know, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone in agriculture right now that we are in a real problem here with farm succession. The average farmer is 60 years old, and that means in the next 15 years, according to most of the land grant, demographic studies, the next 15 years, half of all America's agriculture equity, that's land, buildings, and machinery, is going to change hands. It's going to go to someone else. I'm not saying that the next generation, it's just going to go to somewhere else. And of course, my big concern is, well, how much is Vanguard, BlackRock, and Bill Gates going to own? And so I'm committed to try to create avenues that this goes to a new generation of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed entrepreneurial farmers rather than other entities. So let's go down this list. Number one, you have to assume there is room for more. You know, most too many farmers think that their place can't handle anymore. I'm already working 100 hours a week. You know, uh, how can I do any more? And my encouragement here is that I think the first thing is for all of us to punch through and realize there is not a single place in the world, including our farm, that is fully utilized. There is always another nook, another cranny, another enterprise, another stackable something, another thing that you can do, even if it's not specifically farming. Maybe it's value adding something. Maybe instead of just growing corn, you can make cornbread muffins. Maybe instead of just having apples, you can make apple cobbler. Sometimes the very best opportunity on a farm is actually investing in something that allows you to value add, whether it's agritourism, moving a product to a more valuable option, turning grapes into juice, or apples into apple cobbler. Those kinds of things carry tremendous opportunity. And so I think the first thing is to realize that a farm is not fully utilized. I'll be very, very transparent, and a lot of times I can't even get through this story. One of my most favorite um, remembrances of my dad, who died in 1988. I was only 31, so I want you to think about that. I was only 31 when my dad passed away, and I'd only been on the farm for 5 years, and full time. And Dad never made a living from the farm. He always wanted to, but he never made a living from the farm. It's another story. I won't bore you with all the things here, but he made a platform to be able to launch another generation. And and so Teresa and I came back to the farm full time in September 24, 1982. I was 25, and we were living in the attic of the old farmhouse. We'd fixed it up into a modest apartment. You could call it an attic. We called it our penthouse. We were living on about $400 or $500 a month. We drove a $50 car, took our honeymoon in a $50 car, and the longer I live, we've been married 45 years, the more I'm just amazed that she was willing to take a honeymoon in a $50 car. And but she was, and she would can. Those of you who are in extension homemakers and stuff, she'd can 800 quarts of stuff. We had a big garden. We had, our milk cows. So, we had our food, we had our firewood, wood stove, and we just lived very, very frugally. Well, it took about 3 years for us to feel like, okay, we're going to make it now. And Dad became ill, and he was down for a couple of years. Well, one day, this was in, I don't know, maybe 87 or something. So realize we'd kind of just passed the hump of, I think, I know we're going to make it. And he called me into the bedroom one day. He said, bring a pencil and a paper. And so I went in the bedroom, and he was in the bed. And he said, let's brainstorm. Remember, we only had 90 acres of pasture. This was a small farm. We had a lot of woodland, but hadn't figured out how to make any money with that yet. And so, we had this little pasture, and we had just, like, for the first year, had enough money left over at the end of the year to kind of start a little savings account. And he says, let's brainstorm how many salaries could be generated from this little place. And so I sat there, and he wrote, and we brainstormed. And I've still got the paper here in our objective file, um, a file of objectives, not an objective, a file of dreams and objectives. And that day, he and I came up with 22 full-time salaries that could be generated from the farm. And here we are. What are we now? 40 years later, and or almost 40 years later. And guess how many salaries we generate now from the farm? 22. 22. And if I did that exercise today with Daniel, our son, who now runs the farm, we'd probably have 100 salaries. My point is that we farmers, we're so locked into this idea of we never get enough rain, we never get enough sun, we never make enough hay, we never we live in this world of scarcity and not enough, and the idea of abundance, that we could actually create way more opportunity here than we can imagine, is just something that you really have to work at it. I mean, and you have to surround yourself with people who aren't naysayers, but actually believe there is room for more. There is room for more income, more salaries. So that's number one. Number two, we've got to encourage independent fiefdoms in our children. Independent fiefdoms. And I believe the magic age for this is between 8 and 11. The reason for that is that at 8, a child knows enough about money to know they'd rather have a dollar bill than two quarters. Before 8, lots of times, a child would rather have two shiny quarters than a dollar bill. But something happens, around 7 or 8, they start realizing, oh, there's value here, and they start thinking about, the different amounts of value. So at 8, they're old enough to know that. They're also beginning to come into their personality. Are you mechanical? Are you verbal? Are you, do you like pictures? Are you artistic? Those kinds of things. They start coming to their personality, their what they enjoy doing. Do you like, tinkering with machines? Do you like, woodworking? Or would you rather, you're a bookworm, that sort of thing. And that goes really well until about 11. And about 11, then they start becoming little adults. And little adults become concerned about what other people think, other people's expectations, other people's ideas about, how you should, what you should do, what you should live. And so there's something magic about that. Let me give you a story. So our granddaughter Lauren, her older brothers had their businesses. One was raising ducks, and one was raising sheep. And they were 8, 9, 10 years old. Here she is. She's 5. Girls are always ahead of boys. So I mean, let's get that out of the way real quick. And so she's about 5, and she's watching her brothers, with their little businesses. Well, she knows we're having this chicken pickup day. There's going to be all these customers at the farm one day. And so we're all in there. There's customers in the sales building and everything. And Lauren disappears. And we don't think much of it. I mean, our farm's pretty open. And so she's gone for, 30 minutes. She comes back in, and she's carrying this real wonderful big, all she can carry, bouquet of wildflowers. She's been down around the pond, out in the field, and she's picked this bouquet of wildflowers. And of course, by that time now, all of us we're kind of, okay, oh, what's this all about? She comes walking in, and you can see her looking up. She's 5. She's looking up at all the adults. She finally goes. She picks her target. Yeah, I mean, you can see her. She picked her target. She walked over to this nice 30-year-old handsome young man standing there, and she looked at me and she said, "I'm Lauren Salatin, and I picked these flowers, and I'm sure your wife would love a bouquet of flowers, and I'm selling them for $1." And of course the guy, he's looking down at her like, oh, what have I gotten myself into? And here's what's funny. Before he could say anything, she was already ready with plan B. She says, "But if you don't have a wife, I'm sure you know a lady who would love to have flowers." I mean, she was ready with plan B. You are not going to say no to me. Now, here's my point of the story. Of course, it was wonderful. Everybody laughed and had a great time. And of course, he bought the flowers. But here's the gist of the story. At 12, she wouldn't have done that. At 12, you become a lot more conscious of what other people are thinking, that sort of thing. But the innocence of a child is just wonderful. And so when I say encourage independent fiefdoms, I mean entrepreneurial things that a child can do as their own business. It doesn't have to be big, but it does need to be. They need to be in charge. They are an authority. I don't believe in allowances. Kids should, earn their keep. But between about 8 and 11 is just this magic time of knowing who you are, and wanting to jump into something, and they can become the expert in that. So for our son, I mean, for me, it was my chickens. I got chickens when I was 10. My brother had rabbits. For us, next generation, Daniel had his rabbits when he was little. He thought his uncle's rabbits were pretty cool. He'd heard about them. So he started his rabbit project when he was 8, joined 4-H and all that, went all through, became 4-H state president actually when he was 18. Um, and then our daughter Rachel, she started with these, she started baking. She made zucchini bread, pound cake, and these little, those little looms, where you make little potholder loom things. She's very artistic. She's our little artist, and she'd put colors together and sell those things. She made potpourri, stuff to smell, put her little spices together, made these little baggies and things. But both of them had their own independent businesses, and so when they turned 20, and they're both, 40-ish now, Daniel's over 40, Rachel's not quite. But so we're talking about 20 years ago, both of them hit 20 years old with $20,000 in the bank that they had earned from their own businesses and their own incomes. So this teaches them that the farm actually has opportunity. It has opportunity for more income and more salaries. Number 3, make work enjoyable. Never make work as punishment. Don't ever tell your kids, you've been bad, go pull weeds in the green beans. No, what you want to do is turn pulling weeds into green beans into a game. And you put a pink ribbon down the row for you and one for your child, and say, let's pull the weeds or pick the beans or whatever you got to do, and let's race to the ribbon. And you don't need to let them win. It's okay, and and let them enjoy completion. And which leads me to a part of this is never make time-oriented tasks make completion-oriented tasks. In other words, don't ever say go pull weeds for 30 minutes. You give them a space and you say pull the weeds here or pick the beans here. I don't know why I'm stuck on beans, but it's fine. I like green beans, and do this. And when you're done, we'll have an ice cream cone, or I'll read you, Dr. Seuss story or whatever. But or I'll give you a quarter. I mean, the reward can be whatever it is, but don't put a time on it, or you teach dawdling. How you make work enjoyable is by making clear expectations of the description of it, and then they get to choose whether they want to complain about it or get it done. That's all up to them. And what you'll find very quickly is that they will actually enjoy completing things. Who doesn't like to complete a task? And so when you make clear completion expectations, then you turn the work from just putting in time to actually being, I'm completing a task. Whole different emotional thing on that. So whatever you can do to make work enjoyable, and don't ever complain about your work. I mean, how many farmers come in and, oh, cows are sick, the grasshoppers are eating this, rah, rah, rah. The way most farmers talk about their farms, I wouldn't want it either. And so, you have to figure out, step up above that, and appreciate the farm for what it offers. Number four, number four, you've got to offer a big vision. You can't just, be producing beef or milk or soybeans. Um, you've got to make it sacred. So around here, we've made a big point of, yes, we have a farm, but we're healing the land. We're building soil. We're hydrating the landscape. We're healing people with healthy food. So your vision has to be sacred. It's got to be a bigger vision than you, and it must be attractive. It must be attractive so that as young people discover and grow into your vision of the farm, it is something beyond them, and and it's of great service to other people. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to, move your farm. Can we say drudgery? To move your drudgery to a greater goal, a greater objective, a greater thing that you're doing, and that's a real positive way to instill in your kids that this is bigger than us. So our mission statement here at Polyface, which everybody, all our farm team has to memorize, is to develop economically, emotionally, and environmentally enhancing agricultural prototypes and facilitate their duplication throughout the world. That's a big mission, okay? But that kind of mission, what kind of farm mission, and most farms don't have a mission statement like that, a one sentence mission statement. What are we here for? What are we doing? What gets us up in the morning? And if you can capture that in one sentence and inculcate that into your family, into your kids, into your daily thought process, it helps to keep the perspective right about, this is bigger than me, bigger than us. We're serving and we're ministering to our culture and our world. It's a big thing. Number five, your farm should be a place of pride. Okay, you need to have a farm that you're proud of. My friend Andy Lee years ago told me, he said, when visitors come to your farm and you take them on a tour, if you have to say apologize about something or be embarrassed about something more than two times, you've got a management problem. Look, we're all human. Sometimes the cows are out. Sometimes the green beans are weedy. I'm still back to green beans. Sometimes things aren't exactly the way they should be. But most things should be what they ought to be like. And so you need to minimize those embarrassments. And think about the average thing that a child does as soon as they get big enough in a on a factory chicken farm. It's the dead walk. Go pick up the dead birds. Well, that's not the way to instill pride in your kids. That should not be the first real job that your child has. Uh, I'm thinking of some of the old timers around me, what they used to say, what the first things that a child could do around or did around the farm. And one was, you'll love this. One told me the first thing that he did when he was a little kid, and all these people are, long gone now. These are old timers when I was a teen, and I'm talking to the old farmers in the area. So, we're talking about people that grew up in, 1900, 1910. And they said they once a week, like the first day of the week, they had to go shoot something or trap something or catch something, a squirrel, a raccoon, a rabbit, or something, and take it to the chicken yard and take a knife and rip open its belly so the chickens could have fresh animal protein in the wintertime when they couldn't get, crickets and grasshoppers and things like that. And that that instills a place of pride. I'm feeding the chickens, uh, and so your farm needs to be, uh, not smelly. It should be beautiful, a place of accomplishment and a place of discovery where you're interacting with things. The, the the ecosystems of open land, forest land, and water create a diversity of wildlife. I mean, it is very common for us to walk out and see a flock of wild turkeys or deer or a turtle walking, going from pond to pond. Those, a duck, a wood duck or something, hatching a clutch of babies. The mallards, they're always, hatching a bunch of babies. You go out and see the babies. Those kind of things are create a place of beauty and pride and discovery. Oh, look, oh, look, oh, look, there's an indigo bunting, there's a meadowlark, those kinds of things. So your farm should be, aesthetically and aromatically, sensually romantic, a place of pride that you're proud of. Number six, realize that you can't do it all. You can't do it all. Um, Pick what's important and realize that um, if you're excited about something, chances are your kids will be excited about it too if you're excited about it, and they will help you. All right. Um, you know, enjoy creating places of needfulness for your kids on the farm. And this is one of the reasons why, I love I love compost more than chemicals as a farmer, because I've never heard of a kid, drowning in a compost pile. But there are a lot of kids that have been hurt falling off of silos, drowning in manure lagoons and things like that. So just from as you incorporate the children, you can't do it all. Um, back in the early days, our kids, as they were tiny, um, not even out of diapers hardly. They could open and close water spigots, for example. Water comes out just as fast for a 3-year old as it does for an adult if you're opening a spigot. And so think about things that your children can do, um, that are not make work, but are actually needful things that they can do, because you can't do it all. So incorporate the children into those daily tasks. Number seven, good enough is perfect. Oh boy, this is a big one. Um, how many of us grew up with fussy parents, especially dads? And when I start into this and do this presentation, I see 50-year-olds with tears coming down their cheeks. they're 50-year-olds, dad's 80, and they still have to ask dad if they can use a 2x4 or, do something. And my favorite story here is my dad. I got this point from him. He was a journeyman pattern maker at a auto manufacturing company before he went into the Navy in World War II. As a very, very young man, right out of high school, he got into the pattern making. And if you know anything about pattern making, we're talking about people at that time. I'm sure they do it with computers now, all sorts of things, but that time, these woodworkers, these pattern makers would make molds to pour automobile parts in. So imagine making a wooden mold that you could pour a carburetor in. We're talking about meticulous, and he was a meticulous woodworker. And so here I am, I'm 15 or 16. We've got this sagging corral gate. So I take the initiative and I go and make this corral gate. So I realized Dad he could make grandfather clocks. He made furniture. He was a meticulous woodworker. So I make this corral gate, and I'm a total functional. I have no artistry in me at all. I can't draw a stick man. You don't want me to be your Pictionary partner, all right? Every state looks the same, all right? And so you just got to start naming them. Not maybe that bad, but it's pretty bad. And so I go to the shop and I make this gate to hang in the corral. I go hang it, and it swings, and it's functional, but it's a parallelogram. It's like 87-degree, corners, and it's a parallelogram. And to this day, it still, makes my heart sing to remember Dad going by there, looking at that gate. Thank you, son. Good. That's great. And I can only think of how it vexed his righteous soul, like Lot sitting in the gate of Sodom and Gomorrah. How it vexed his soul to look at that parallelogram gate, but he didn't fuss about it. He said it was okay. And my point here is, if he had said, "Oh my goodness, come on, can't you at least use the carpenter square and square this thing up and make a decent gate?" If he had said that, would I have made chicken shelters, egg mobiles, gobbledygos, shade mobiles, the things that I've made in my life? Would I have done that if he had fussed about those early attempts? And so, this good enough is perfect is a big deal. Fussiness makes defeated kids, and it includes in the kitchen. The first time a child helps with the dishes, and misses that little bit of food on spaghetti on the edge of the plate. Do we say thanks for your help, or do we say, my goodness, the kitchen looks like a tornado went through. There's soap suds on the floor, water up on the counter, and look, you missed this little piece of food on the edge of this plate. There are times to be more meticulous, and there are times to just praise, praise, praise. The fact is, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly first, and so we need to cultivate. Yep, this is the way I would do it. And today, Daniel now runs the farm. I just kind of run around, and there are things that he's doing now. He's 44. He is totally in charge of day-to-day operations. There are things that he does that are different than the way I do it. One example is tying off an electric fence. When you run an electric fence across, you're running poly wire, and you come to the end, you tie it off. I tie it off one way, he ties it off another way. And you know what? It's okay. They both work. One's his technique, one's mine. And dads drive their kids away by being this fussiness over, no, it's got to be my way, or nothing. Number eight. Number eight, make room to live. Make room to live. So on our farm, we have about 3 picnic sites. We got one up in the woods, one on top of the mountain, one out by the pond. There's stuff around. Uh, so you have picnic areas. Eat, try to eat at 6. There is a routine, um, and being punctual about eating. And if the cows are out, go get the cows, okay? But under normal circumstances, a lot of times farmers disrespect their wives, their spouses, and I'm being very sexist here. I'm figuring the lady's fixing dinner and the guy's out. I mean, that's the way it is in most places. And and so there's always this tension about can't you come in on time? And the kids grow up with this. All right. So be punctual. If you're going to eat it, respect your wife. If you're going to eat at 6, eat at 6. And unless there's some tremendous emergency, but this is what I'm talking about, making room to live. Make room in your schedule to have a picnic once in a while, to make sure that you do eat at 6. The work is always there, and you never get done on a farm. There's always something more to do tomorrow. And so you've got to make room to live. And some of my, yeah, I remember sometimes, we'd we'd be out making hay, and you're trying to push, you're getting hay in. I mean, hay is, kind of a crisis deal. And Dad would sometimes late in the day just shut off the tractor and say, let's stop and watch the sun go down. And most farmers wouldn't do that, but but Dad would, and it was very meaningful to me. And as I've looked back, it's been, I call those commas in life. You can go away for a 2 week, vacation, whatever, if you want to. But what's actually more valuable, I think, is more commas in life, more times when you just take an hour or an hour, a short time, and you do something special. And so, take time to live. Number nine, family planning. Incorporate all the family in the planning process. There are kind of three acronyms that we have in business. Whitby is working in the business, and that's what most people do. Nine of the time, Whitby is working in the business. You're hauling water, you're, mowing hay or whatever. Watby or Watby, WATB, Watby is worrying about the business, and Watby, WOTB, is working on the business. So you've got Whitby, Watby, and Watby. Which one of those generates the greatest amount of return for the effort? Whitby, Watby, or Watby? Well, the answer is Watby. Working on the business, actually planning. What strategic things should we do? What should we buy? What should we not buy? What should we sell? What should we do in that field, not in that field? What experiments should we run? What trials should we run? Those kinds of things. Working on the business. Guess what? That returns the greatest return. Guess which one most of us spend the least amount of time doing? Whitby, that's where we're just out there. We're ants, we're just ants carrying stuff all day, right? Watby, worrying about the business. Oh yeah, we do plenty of that. What are the Trump's tariffs going to do to soybean prices, and what's the bumper corn crop going to do to the prices, that sort of thing. But the real return is Watby, where we sit down, we take our talents, we take our interests, we take the records we've been keeping, financial records, production records, different things, and we work on the business. That's where the greatest return is. And so sitting down as a family and planning through that, working on Watby, on the business. If this were yours, what would you do tomorrow? Asking those kind of questions. Um, Scheduling, have an agenda, uh, and you can trade off who's in charge. It's okay. Dad doesn't have to run the meetings all the time. Let mom run the meetings. Let sis run the meetings. Let son run the meetings. You can trade off, and so you come to consensus. And let me just say, as a little rabbit hole here on this one, that lifestyle, as the children get older and older, come out of teen years and get older, lifestyle versus business. When they're earning money, it's their money. And I know how many times, especially your adult children, mom and dad will, why did they spend money on that? And this becomes forms of tension. Listen, if they earned it and it's their money, let them spend it the way they want to. If they want to blow it and buy something stupid that you think is stupid, well, maybe they don't think it's stupid. It's their money. Let them spend it the way they want to. Don't embroil the farm business trying to overreach into an adult child's lifestyle or how they want to spend their money. And this is one reason why I think it's so important for kids to have their own businesses, so that I remember one time Daniel was down at the farm store. He was buying a rabbit feed. So he had, I don't know how much he had enough money for 1,000 pounds. So I don't know, it was like, $150 or something. He puts it up on the counter. He says, I want a half a ton of rabbit feed, big red rabbit feed, Southern States. And so the guy at the counter, of course, he's Daniel's whatever, 9, 10 years old, nose barely comes over the top of the counter. And the guy grins at him and says, well, why don't you get a ton? You get a $5 price break if you get a ton. Daniel kind of scrunches up his face. He looks at the guy and says, well, I don't have enough money for a ton. All I got is for 1,000 pounds. And the guy looked at me and he winked and he said, how many adults haven't learned that lesson yet? But it's good to learn those lessons at 8, 9, 10 years old, including, and both of our kids, they had their money, and we let them spend it the way they wanted to. And they bought some silly things at 8, 9, 10 years old. And you know what? They found out that bright, shiny object only satisfies for about 30 seconds. And then somehow it doesn't satisfy anymore. Well, it's a lot better to learn that on a $2 item when you're 10 than on a $10,000 item when you're 30. All right. And so if those kids are earning their money, just stay out of how they're going to spend it. They'll figure it out. And it's not your business. It's their money. Let them have it. And finally, number 10, brainstorm complementary income streams. Be willing to brainstorm complementary income streams. And here are some ideas to help stimulate your thinking on this. Do you have infrastructure that's underutilized? Do you have a building that sits empty a little bit? I did a couple of weeks of seminars in Australia several years ago, and at the time, the sheep industry in Australia was in complete free fall. I mean, at that time, I remember they said they had 2 years of global wool supply stocked up in barns all over the country. Uh, because synthetics and acrylics and polyesters and stuff were coming in, taking the wool market, and they had all this extra wool. So the sheep industry was in complete free fall. I mean, oversupply, prices out. So people were getting out of the business left and right, which left all these wonderful sheep shearing sheds empty all over the countryside. And I did an exercise. I asked for, I had these folks coming to this farm seminar, 100 or so, and I'd say, let's brainstorm a minute. Let's brainstorm for 5 minutes. And I had a whiteboard. I'd say, what could you do with a vacant sheep shearing shed? And these things were pretty big. I mean, they were often, goodness, 5,000 square feet, pretty good sized sheds. And it was amazing all the ideas that flowed what you could do with a vacant sheep shearing shed. And so a lot of times we have buildings or machinery. Is there a machine that you've invested in that's sitting idle most of the time? Can you use it for something else? So underutilized infrastructure to generate another income stream. If you've got a machine sitting, could you do custom work, for somebody else? And then leverage your landscape features. I mean, do you have spots that are especially warm, especially cold, especially wet, especially dry? Think about your terrain aspects, facing north, facing south, east, west, all those kinds of things. Leverage your landscape features. I mean, a metal-sided farm building with a solarium on the side can, in Pennsylvania, can suddenly give you a Florida zone to to grow, to extend seasons, to grow things that normally nobody would ever be able to grow there. Um, and then diversify your product, your marketing, and your portfolio. The easiest thing, the easiest way to increase your income from a marketing standpoint is to take existing customers that are spending $200 with you and add additional items, add pork to your chickens, or milk to your pork and chickens, or beef to your pork, chickens, and milk. All right. You add additional things to take your customers and double their income with you. Because if you've got loyal customers, the easiest way is to increase them. Close your waste streams. What are you throwing away? What is a salvage thing? Can you turn that into something better? Junk wood. Can you, just instead of just firewood, could you grow shiitake mushrooms on it, for example, and start a shiitake mushroom business? Think about symbiosis, synergy, and complementary enterprises, including agritourism, from glamping to to farm tours to yoga on the pond dam. I mean, there's a million things that people are willing to pay for from your farm. And so gather the family together, gather all of you, and brainstorm. You'd be surprised what the children, what the next generation can come up with, because they haven't always done it this way, and so their brains are full of brand new ideas that the older generation may not have thought of. And then those can be turned into income streams that can complement the mothership and be non-competitive, but actually synergistic with it. So those are 10 concepts that I would just share as we talk about, how can we make room for the next generation, attract the next generation, and create a successional plan for either your own kids, or nephews, or relatives, or people completely unrelated. Our farm now is primarily a complete team of unrelated people, but we've got kids, we've got young people here, succession, and so it's good to go, even if it's not family. So those are some ideas, and I hope they've been helpful. And thank you all for joining.